Understanding the technology that powers the money is essential. Knowing the business drivers that inspire how the money is made is crucial. Bridging the gap between the mind of the technologist and the mind of the business is monumental. That is what TBF is all about. Let's start this never-ending conversation. It's time.
We are back with another episode of the Tech Behind FinTech. Really excited about today's show. I have with my guest, Deniz Johnson, COO of Stratyfy. Today's topic, mitigating bias in FinTech, a deep dive into ethical AI. Deniz, how are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. How about you, Namdi?
Doing great. Always love today. Like these live shows, great discussions. I'm always excited. Before we kick off the show, we're going to do some housekeeping. We are streaming live from Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and we have a separate stream going from my phone to Instagram. We wave to the people who just joined. So we have those platforms that we're streaming from. At any time, the people on Instagram, you can go to the Tech Behind FinTech, and you'll be able to comment, and you can see the live show there via YouTube link. For everyone else, feel free to drop your comments. You'll be part of the show. Without further ado, let me introduce my guest, Deniz Johnson, read her wonderful bio, and hop into today's topic. Deniz Johnson is a digital transformation expert with over 25 years of experience driving innovation in financial services, software, and healthcare. Recognized as a top 45 global female fintech leader by Innovate Finance and a 2023 BAI Global Innovation Rising Star. She has also been honored twice by the NYC FinTech Woman as an inspiring fintech female leader. As COO of Stratyfy, Deniz leads the implementation of transparent machine learning solutions that tackle AI bias and improve credit risk decisions. She previously held leadership roles at State Street, Academian Asset Management, Pegasystems, and the Mayo Clinic. Deniz holds a BSc in Management Engineering from Istanbul Technical University and an MBA from the University of Iowa. Wonderful, extensive bio. I love it. So,
given the years, the bio is, you try to shorten it as much as possible, but.
No, but I love it because it just shows a wealth of experience. It shows, when I read your bio, it shows passion for what you do. It shows, an expertise over 2 decades of experience in a particular field, which is fintech, the field we both love and work in. And it just, and I'm happy to have you on the show because I want to dive into this topic. I want to learn more about it, and I want our guests to do so. Our audience to do so as well. So for the audience, please, at any time, if you want to ask questions, feel free to drop a comment. We'll put it on the screen and we'll dive into it. Without further ado, today's show topic is mitigating bias in fintech, a deep dive into ethical AI. For everyone watching, Deniz, what is ethical AI?
So I'm going to take us a little bit, start with ethics and then end in responsible AI. So, we know ethics is very important, ethical decision making. So when you talk about ethical AI, it's using AI and capabilities of AI, and granted, AI is a very big umbrella term for multiple technologies, but using these technologies without doing any harm to the humans or to the communities, really making the decisions or using these tools for good, for a business purpose without making any, creating negative consequences for the people who use it, or for whom they are used for. Now, while it might be a little controversial, but I actually think that while ethics is great, ethical AI in itself is a concept that does not have enough teeth enough impact. So I'm going to take us to the next step, which is responsible AI. Responsible AI is, at this point, we're not talking ethics. We're doing. We're actually implementing tools, technologies, all under the umbrella of AI. It could be machine learning, it could be neural networks, whatever it is, for good, with boundaries, with guidelines, so that it is truly without any negative consequences while solving a business problem. It is not creating negative consequences to, for the user, but for whom it's used for.
So, it's an interesting distinction you're making between the ethical part and the responsible part. And I want to really dive into those and break those down. So, based on what you're saying, from my understanding, right? So the ethical, we can compare it to the laundry list of items, like in any compliance study, laundry lists of, listen, these are the things that you should be doing, right? These are the things. So, if what you're saying is, okay, these are the things that you should be doing, but not only are you doing it, how are you doing it, and how are you implementing it? That comes in the responsible part. Does that sound accurate?
100%, 100%. And this is why I say, well, it might be because we talk a lot about, on the media, you hear about ethical decisions, ethical use. It's great to talk about it, but I mean, it's a good learning and education for the public. But when you come to think about it, how many of those ethical AI conversations turn into a responsible way of implementing AI? And that's a very different talk, and action is very different.
You use the word controversial, and I want to understand why you're using that particular word when it comes to ethical and responsible AI.
There are certain words that are very much being used to, as I said, in the media, you're always hearing about ethical decisions, ethical AI. Because the two things, doing and talking about doing is two different things. I usually am the one who says, ethics is great. Ethics is not action. You need to be able to action. And that's why it's controversial, because everybody knows ethical AI is good. It's the right way of thinking about AI. But I want action. I want like, ethics is great, but it is not going to solve the problems. It's not going to make enough of an impact unless you implement responsibly, without negatively impacting the people and communities.
It's interesting, right? Because you have companies right now where AI is not necessarily new, right? It's been around for a while, but in terms of, I would say it's mainstream now. So, you have a lot of startup companies that are legacy companies now implementing various AI solutions, right? And the whole, and correct me if I'm wrong, help me out here. It's just, from my research for the show, the whole concept around ethical AI, would you say that that's new?
So I think it has gotten recognition more recently than when this whole started. I mean, I'll give you an example of why I'm in the AI field, because that's, even though it's going to date me a while.
Let's go for it.
When I was in a quantitative investment firm and my team was dealing with data, I realized the data did not include anybody like me. and we were making investment decisions. When you're a quant, you're in like the first version of you're using predictive modeling as a part of the decision making. So this is very early, stages of what we do today. And, that pretty much made me really question, who are we leaving behind? If we're making recommendations, investment recommendations, and a segment of the population, 51% of the population is not represented, and just by basic statistics, women will be making more of the wealth decisions in less than 10 years from now, because we tend to live longer, and at certain period, women end up making more of the wealth decisions. And we are making investment recommendations without representing this group, because we weren't in the history. So recognizing this was not something that we were thinking about back in the day, but it was, as the AI tools got more sophisticated, a lot more use of it. At the beginning, everybody goes, and I mean, you can see it in the LLMs right now. Everybody's so interested in the new technology. It's the new shiny thing. So everybody jumps in, but they're not, nobody's asking who's being left behind. I gave you an example from 15, 20 years ago. We're seeing the same thing with the LLMs today. Who are you leaving behind? I'll actually take one more layer. When I was teaching FinTech at Northeastern University, that was the first question I asked to all the students. I first asked, what tools are you using today? Because this is the generation, they're born with a smartphone or smart device. And it's like, okay, so you're embedded into the technology right now. Have you thought about who can't have this technology? And what does that mean when we are making decisions for the future, looking at the past? And this is an important distinction to make, because there is a solution, there's a way to address this, but we started thinking about it relatively recently, maybe in the last 10 years or so. And Namdi, that was a very long-winded way of answering your question, but I hope I was able to clarify.
No, it's all good. We have time. We're not in a rush. We could have long answers to questions. It's all good. Before we jump in, we always like feedback from the audience. Q Zhao, go Deniz. You have people cheering you on during this show. I love it. We love crowd participation. So, the thing I got out, one of the points that I got from your answer, inclusiveness, right?
Yes.
So part of ethical AI are all groups represented, right? Because we all know, no matter how sophisticated the technology is when we're dealing with AI, because everyone's hearing this thing, artificial intelligence, machine learning, they're doing amazing things with movie selection, with your financial data, all this stuff. But at the end of the day, the most simplistic, foundational part of all of the complex things is that underlying data, right? All the technology, the programs, the MLLs, the LLMs, all of that is leveraging some underlying data.
Yes.
And from what I understood from what your answer is, okay, it's who are we leaving behind in that data, right? So if only a certain section of people are represented in that data, and we're relying on technology to make decisions about your credit, about fraud, about a plethora of things that impact your financial stability, but it's only getting a smidget of the population in that data, how accurate are those results going to be? And that kind of comes back to the ethical part. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Yeah, and that comes to the ethical part, and at Stratyfy, that's what we're trying to solve. We are trying to address these hard decisions so that your decisions, you can trust them, you can, with precision, with transparency, that your decisions, you understand your decisions, you make, with a very clarity, you make choices in your decisions. You're not dealing with a black box. There's no box, and that's the innovation that we're bringing as Stratyfy into the space.
So now, all right. So if we understand that part of what you're bringing to the table, right? On the ethical part, I'm gonna jump to the original based on what we're talking about with the inclusivity. The ethical part is saying we have to have all parties represented in this data if we're going to make decisions. Now, the responsible part is like, how transparent is that underlying data that the model is relying on?
Yeah.
How do we see that? Is that?
Yes, the transparency. I think there's multiple ways of solving this problem, of addressing, and actually our co-founder, CEO Laura Kornhauser always says, it's not if the data is biased, it's how much bias and what you're going to do about it. So the data is either missing pieces, it's not representative of the communities, all the people that, and some of it is just normal, because if you think about it, past cannot always help us predict future. When you look at the past, the cultural values were different. What was acceptable then is not acceptable now. So you can't really rely on the past fully. Groups are not fully represented, or they don't exist because they weren't a part of the decision making. And then when you take that forward, how do you trust a decision looking at a historical information? Then that's where the responsible part comes. You need full transparency. You need to understand what is driving your decisions, what is making that impact. You have to have guardrails, what is acceptable for your business, for your community. And then you also need to, you can, in our opinion, and in my opinion as well, you can't take the human out of the critical decisions, because they, again, going to ethics, you can't teach a machine ethics, but you can teach a human. What is right today, a human will know and can influence the decision. And when I say human in the loop, human imparts their knowledge, their thoughts, their guiding principles, their ethics. They can impart it and share it with the machine so that the machine makes the right decision, that you can trust the decision. So I'm not saying machine does that and human presses the button. That is not what I'm saying.
No, it's interesting. It's interesting, like going with that line of thought in which you can't teach a machine ethics. Interesting. I have, because as you said it, right, I have certain opinions on that. I'm just thinking about it right now, and this would be an interesting discussion. I don't know. Can you, is it, because if you think about it, right, like you said earlier, the ethic part is literally just the compliance bullet points that we have to follow. So are we ethically I use compliance in general, but are we, or it's just certain principles? Are we following this? Like that's the ethics. Like in reading like IBM's ethics guidelines, right? They focus on transparency and trust in AI, bias reduction, explainability, data steward. There's different things. I have it in some notes. But is it possible to put that list in an AI system? Oh wow, we have a LinkedIn user. Hey, LinkedIn user, if you can, so I can address you by your name, can you just put in the next comment your name, because I just see LinkedIn user. I think you're private, and I'll add your comment. If we put certain guidelines in an AI system and explain, okay, this is what we're doing, would the machine be able to tell us if we're not abiding by those guidelines?
So I'll give you this is a great conversation. I'm excited to have this. So
excited too. Yeah.
So yes, you can put guidelines, but do you know if those guidelines are still valid 2 days from now? Because the decisions, like in the past, certain communities were not allowed to make financial decisions. Think about credit scores. In the South, it's slower. Like these are because the communities that were, the groups that were participating. I mean, there's a very much of a racial aspect to the credit scores. If you rely on those credit scores, because they are coming from the fact that historically there wasn't a generational wealth gap, certain racial groups will have lower credit scores. Now, that you have, when you're making credit decisions today, you're relying on that information. Even if you say, I am okay with this, I have an ethical checklist, it doesn't address those types of things. What you want to do is I did say you can't teach ethics to the machine because ethics changes. You have to look at the bias in a fully transparent way, because the definition of bias, what was then to what is now, is different. And I think that's an important distinction you need to be making. You need to have a human that provides let me go back to the example I was giving. Sorry, I'm a little bit. And hi, Angie. Hi, Brandon. Thank you for listening. When you're looking at the same concept, so certain groups, racial disparity, it's impacting the wealth. It's impacting the future of their wealth, because now they're not eligible for a bigger house, for example, because their credit score is lower. And again, these are perpetuating the historical challenges in the data. So what you want to do is, for example, if you're a lending officer and you're looking at it and you know your community, so for example, you work in a CDFI, community development, the funding institution for it, that person is, a good person, has always paid their bills. You have a financial relationship, and you want to give them a loan, and you're not counting the credit score as the only input, because you have a relationship, their family, their history, all that kind of stuff. Why can't we do that? And this is the responsible part. Why can't we do that? That insight that that is additional information, and that becomes an input to your credit decision in an automated way through AI. And that's where we need the human in the loop.
Okay, I think I get what you're saying. We have like, but I want to. It's an audience member. I think Brandon has a comment. I'm gonna put that on. Before I want to kind of jump into what you're saying, so I can make sure I'm 100% clear. So, and also the audience, from the AI and technology standpoint, right? We have these guidelines, right? But if those were just followed to the T, there's certain factors outside of those guidelines that cannot be accounted for. And that is the human experience. You know what, despite this person's, in this example, credit score may be low, because the machine's going to be real binary, right? Yes or no, right? But despite that, there's certain other factors that we're not taking account for. And those factors can be, for lack of a better word, gut feeling, the understanding other things outside of just the scoring. I know this person's family, I know their history, I know different aspects. And the challenge then is, how do we get that type of data to be factored in to the into the AI process? Like, how do we do that? Interesting.
And go ahead.
Let's jump into, because I always like to give the audience, especially live audience, get their feedback as well. All right, so this is from Brandon, so you can answer this. Ethical implementation of AI requires leveling the playing field for all from the outset. If data is historically biased, then proceeding to use LLMs and other forms of machine learning without accounting for bias simply perpetuates discrepancies that have long existed. By including a human-centered component, you can account for elements that a machine alone cannot interpret without the human input. Being able to remove bias from decisioning is crucial to creating a more equitable, cuts off, but I think just a more equitable, I would just paraphrase, playing field or process. All right, this is cool. I'm going to leave it up. Can you address that, Deniz?
Aside from 100% agreeing with Brandon, I think this is the nuanced approach that I was mentioning. And when you have a responsible AI, you need to, you need transparency, and you need human in the loop. You need, there's other ways, but for example, I'll give another example. We're talking about having and Brandon, I think, just said world financially and otherwise 100%. When you're thinking about the financial, everybody wants to have their economies grow, their country's economy. You want to do good in the business that you're running. These are normal commercial things, but you can't do that if you do not include everybody, which means you have to remove the bias. You have to head on address bias that is coming into your decisions, and bias in your data, bias in your models, so that you can be inclusive. This is the growth, to be able to grow and to be able to have a stable economy. I mean, one of the things I always say, Christine Lagarde, in an interview, president of the European Central Bank, in an interview, was talking about equal pay to world leaders, and everybody was like saying, yeah, that's good. Yeah, everybody should get equal pay. And nothing was happening. So she changed the conversation to, do you want to grow your economy? Because equal pay will mean more buying power, more growth in your economy. So this example is the example of ethics versus responsible. One is changing changing it from feel good to actually doing, and doing it for the economic stability, for a fair decisions you can trust. And for that, you do need full transparency. You need to know what is going in, what's coming out, how it's, you know, how this conclusion, how this decision is reached, and you need to know, and you need to have a human in the loop approach.
Like that example with Christine Lagarde that you just mentioned, but I have a different take on that. Right?
Okay.
So she asked a bunch of world leaders, let's talk about equitable pay. They're like, yeah, but nothing's being done. She rephrases it, do you want to grow your economy? Oh, yes. How do we do that? And maybe with what I'm about to say could relate back to the responsible for the AI. She rephrased it to something they care more about.
Yeah.
Like, look, equitable pay is cool. Yeah, that's whatever. That's good. But what I really care about is growing my economy. And I don't, if you told me that equitable pay will grow it, I'll do that. If you told me equitable pay will not grow it, then we won't do that. At the end of the day, we want to grow our economy. And however we can do that, that's what we're going to do. It just so happens it's aligned with an ethical approach.
Yeah.
But if that approach wasn't ethical, I think they still will do the same thing, because at the end of the day, they want to grow the economy, and that's more important to them. And the reason I like this example is because now, back to the ethical versus responsible, is it really a reframe to organizations, to things they actually that are impacting shareholders, right? That are impacting the bottom line. Is that how we get them to become more responsible?
Yeah, totally. Because, going back to the example, it's a reframing, but the ethical approach is the right approach to grow your business, to not harm people, and to provide economic stability to communities that has been traditionally left behind. To be able to do that, just listing the checklist is not going to be enough. So that's why there's a little bit more nuance. You do need to have a different approach, and ethics doesn't come to that. Ethical AI doesn't get to that level of detail. It is high level principles, and that's probably where I would make that distinction.
Interesting. We start talking about bias, and and definitely feel free to pull from what you guys do at Stratyfy, right? How do we eliminate, or how do we I don't know if elimination is possible, correct me if I'm wrong, so I'm going to change my word from eliminate to reduce. And how do we do that?
So I think the right term would be mitigating, because you can't, as you said, you can't totally remove. I always say slaying bias, because I like that, the strength of that word. So bias, kind of like, you're never going to be able to get rid of it in the true sense, but what is acceptable? It's a business risk decision. Today we have fair lending laws. They have been around for a while, and despite many attempts, we still have fines that are being issued, because fair lending has not been truly addressed. In the financial institutions, there's still fines. So it is incredibly important to understand, do you have bias seeping into your decisions, critical, crucial decisions? How are they impacting your decisions? And what are you going to do about it? And for that, we have a product called Unbiased, and you can use it for any decisioning, and we will understand, will what we say is you can uncover, understand, and then undo that bias. And we walk you through the process, and you can then decide to take action. There are, for fair lending, it's very clear, where the boundaries are. But if you don't, if you're looking at something outside of that norm, there are you need to use what is your business risk tolerance, because bias is a risk. It's in the pure sense, you're not reaching the communities or the groups that you're trying to reach by not addressing it. So forget about, even if you're not looking at the fair lending, if you're not a financial institution, just pure bias in your decisioning is a obstacle for you to do more with your business. And I think that's something that we need to have in our minds. It's not a feel-good exercise. It's affecting your bottom line.
Interesting. Because the problem with bias, the biggest problem is someone, just from a human to human standpoint, not even talking about AI, right? The problem with bias, the biggest problem with bias, from my opinion, is a person who doesn't even know that they're biased. It's not that they literally do not know. They're like, and as you explain it to them, they're still in denial. Like, no, I'm not biased, because it's one of those things. So from an organizational standpoint, it may be a problem in which they're not even understanding that the data itself is biased at all. Like, we don't have that problem. So, what you said earlier with your products, like uncovering, how does that covering process work? Because, it's not a fact that, a person who knows that they're biased, that's great, because look, because you have a real clear decision. Listen, I know I'm biased and I don't care, or I know I'm biased and I want to fix it. But the person or that doesn't even know they're biased, you don't have those options. You just I don't have a problem. So the uncovering aspect, how does that work exactly?
So this is it's the ones where it's like we're all good are the ones that you need to be worried about, as you said. Yeah.
100%.
There is a very good TEDx exercise that I listened. I believe it was. I'm not going to remember her name immediately, but I have her face in front of me. But she walks through. I think it was Valerie Alexander. I can't remember right now. But it might be. She walked through a exercise where she had the audience close their eyes, and she described this scenario and then asked what everybody imagined, and then told the scenario now with gender, with different like the reality of it, and everybody in the audience were like, oh my God, I thought I didn't have biases, or I was very open-minded. And it blew out out the minds of the audience. So going back to uncovering, that's the first step, because if you believe that you are you do not have bias, you really want to check, because it's most likely, because data is always biased, you want to double check, you want to triple check, you want, and we do it through different methods, but on the core, our product, as I said, is fully transparent. So our approach allows us to provide you that transparency that tells you, look, if it is fair lending, here are the tolerances, and here we go. This is what's coming out from your data, from your decisions. And then the second question is this, understand, which is, how is this impacting different communities, different racial groups, or genders? And then it's up to you to take action on it. And if it is, the next step would be undo, or it's with a tolerance where you decide to cope with it. It's not high risk for you, depending on what the decision is. Of course, in fair lending, it's quite clear, but that, again, our technology allows us to really provide that insight directly, especially to people who says that they don't have any. And on the other side, you want to do these checks on a regular basis so that you do not end up in a position where you have to then find out when there is an analysis done by the regulators. You want to be ahead of that.
Two things. Renee Emery, yes, Denise Slay from your statement earlier. Next, you mentioned this. Power of technology while someone's talking. So this is the TED talk that you talked about.
Oh yes, Valerie.
Unconscious bias. Valerie Alexander put it in the comments. No, look, really, really interesting things, right? Because if now you start equating bias to impacting your bottom line, impacting you can get fined for this, it's back to the Christine Lagarde example, right? I care about equitable pay. Yeah. I care about growing my economy. Do I care about bias, not bias? I care about regulatory fines. I care about bad press. I care about these things. So, it had a good conversation with last week regarding, how do companies now start doing good in things around, their impact to the environment. And it was like, do you looking at portfolio company, it was a great conversation. You could look it up on the website to everyone. And it's like, do they care about that, or are they seeing that these companies are performing well, so it makes a better investment decision? And maybe it's just my view from working in financial services so long. I don't have a lot of faith in businesses that I think businesses they care about the bottom line. I think that's the most important thing. Whether it's financial service, they care about the bottom line. I have faith that they're going to do what's necessary to protect that bottom line. If we can align ethics or saving the environment or whatever, or even the health of, there's another study showing, the health of your CEO, of healthier CEOs, they produce better profits. If we could align all those things to the bottom line, think that's what works. So I like what you said regarding, okay, we can check the biases proactively now, and that can help you avoid regulatory fines. Right?
Yeah.
I like that. But I just think sometimes if we just talked about the bias in itself in isolation as a feel good, I don't have the faith in, from a pure profit and business standpoint, a capitalistic society, which, it's all love, that's what they're not incentivized, in my opinion, to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I as I said, the fact that bias exists in every data, it is in your every decision. So you want to have transparent, human in the loop approach to allow you to take that, to see where bias is impacting you, to see how it's impacting your decisions, so that you can trust your decisions, and these decisions will allow you to grow the business. Because think of it as, because I'm very visual, think of it as there's a minefield in your land, and in your field, and you're plowing it. You don't know where the minefield is, or you kind of sort of know where the minefield is, but you're plowing your land, and it's going to blow up. You need to remove it, or at least contain it, but it is impacting how much crop you're going to get. So it's that simple.
That's a very dangerous visual. As you're describing it, I'm visualizing it, and guess what? I'm not going to be plowing anymore. I'm like, all right, I'm going to take off from touching this until that thing is found.
Yeah.
What I know, look, we're closely approaching our segment, our time, but what are some trends that you see in terms of in this area for the future? What are some things that you know?
So there, I'll tell like three things that I'm seeing. One of them is AI, investment to AI, and using of AI technologies. And I'm using really big umbrella term for AI. The technologies underneath that. I predict that we're going to see a lot more, not only investment, but really implementation and use of it much more widely across the board in many organizations, and as well as in financial services. I think the implementation and adoption is going to increase significantly. The second piece is, because I have mentioned CDFIs, I think number of these smaller institutions who are focused on making impact into communities, they will be really coming together to adopt these innovative technologies to do more good for their communities. And then on the regulatory side, I'm seeing a lot more regulatory sandboxes for partnerships with the regulatory bodies. I expect that to happen as well.
No, these are good points. I just wanted to let the audience know.
CDFI, yes, Community Development Financial Institution.
So they know what that is. No, this is great stuff. What we is a lot. I mean, we can obviously keep going. I want to be respectful of your time, because I know I'm keeping you on here for like going an hour right now. And there's so much stuff with this conversation, different directions it can go. But what are some? What are some tips that you can give to companies to be more responsible in their AI efforts, especially for fintechs?
you have to understand how you're making the decision. So you need to understand the inputs, and then you need to also explain how you came to that output. So there are multiple ways of doing that, but it's really important to understand that transparency is really important. And then question who you're leaving behind when you're when you're building this AI platform. Who are you leaving behind? And understand the bias. Again, transparency is incredibly important when you're making decisions. To understanding what goes into that decision and what is impacting that decision. To be able to trust the decisions that you're making, that's one of the key things. As far as implementing AI, because that's an area that I work on, and so if you're absorbing or if you're going to adopt an AI solution, don't think of it as a point solution. Think of it as a transformation, because to be able to really reap the benefit of that investment, you need to really look at these tools can make such a big impact in your business. You need to look at it from if I implement this, what are the possibilities? How my workflow is going to change, my controls are going to change, everything around it. So you really need to think big and holistically to be able to benefit from the investment and adoption of it.
Oh, I want to really thank you, Deniz. One of the things that we do for our guests, we started doing is giving you the platform so you can talk to people about Stratyfy, how to find you, etc. So at this point, I'm going to come off stage and allow you to do that, and then we'll close out the show.
Wonderful. Hi, everyone. At Stratyfy, we provide transparent machine learning solutions for you to make really trustworthy decisions. We work in credit risk, as well as fraud detection and bias detection and mitigation. You can contact us from stratyfy.com, or you can contact me at Deniz at Stratyfy. Looking forward to connecting with you all. Thank you.
So what I'm going to do is give me a second. Let me post the I'm going to post the website so that we can make it part of the show notes and part of the show actual video of the show, so you guys can have, because it's not spelt the typical way you would think Stratyfy is spelt. So I just want to make sure people are clear on it. It's also in the description of the show, but the website is there at Stratyfy, STRATYFY.com, for those who will be listening on the audio podcast, not viewing it. Deniz, thank you very much for today and your time. Really great discussions. Our first discussion on ethical AI, and I liked our back and forth and these types of questions. I loved it. So thank you for that. To our audience, thank you for tuning in. Everyone on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, also all my people on Instagram. I'm watching you guys wave to me and so forth. Appreciate that. We are live every Friday at 12 p.m. One thing I need to tell everyone, we just launched our official newsletter at techbehindfintech.com. That you get it every week on Monday. It's a weekly newsletter, and it's free. It's going to give you all the fintech news and also interviews, upcoming interviews, industry insights from our experts from the community. Definitely subscribe. I'm going to put the link on the show notes. So Tech Behind FinTech /subscribe. You want to subscribe to our newsletter, It's awesome, and we're going to keep growing it, and you're going to get information right on your phones every week. Do not miss it. Great free resource. Other than that, we are live every Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have a host of really amazing people coming on the platform to talk, and really great interviews. We're going to be doing some interesting things this year. Stay looped in, subscribe, get the newsletter, visit our website, techbehindfintech.com. We just launched a new platform, so we have all the news, the fintech news aggregation. We have our TBF On The Go series that we interview some really great leaders at conferences, collective news from various sites, so you can get all your fintech news in one destination. Definitely look into the website, subscribe to the weekly newsletter, stay informed, stay in the loop, and it's all love. I want to thank everyone from watching the show, comments, the support you've given us over the years. We're really grateful. And to all the people that commented today, we have Renee, Brandon, NQ, and everyone watching, the behind the scenes DMs and so forth. Really appreciate you guys. On that note, I wish everyone a very happy weekend. I think for a lot of people, it's going to be a long weekend. They have Monday off, MLK's birthday, so definitely do some active service if you're in the U.S. or so forth. And on that note, everyone have a great day. Deniz, thanks once again. A pleasure to talk to you today. Looking forward to talk future conversations with you on our platform.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Cheers. Let's that note, we are out. Bye.
Understanding the technology that powers the money is essential. Knowing the business drivers that inspire how the money is made is crucial. Bridging the gap between the mind of the technologist and the mind of the business is monumental. That is what TBF is all about. Let's start this never-ending conversation. It's time.